hailstorm in Jerusalem. Hi, welcome to Biblical Explorations. Last time, moving at our breakneck speed, we covered an entire word of the Bible, Genesis 1:1. Just as a little background, we read Bereshit and then bara, which means something like, in the beginning, created. Now notice, the word created here needs a subject. Who did the creating? And that's given in the next word here, Elohim. Elohim is the standard biblical word for God. And we need to take a look at this in a little bit more detail. As you can see in English, in the beginning when God, and likewise in Greek, standard Greek word for God, theos, and in Latin, standard Latin word for God, deus. So in Hebrew here we have a special word, Elohim, which is generally translated as God in English translations. However, as is frequently the case with biblical Hebrew and the Bible in general, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. So we want to take a look for a few minutes at some of the background and conceptualizations of this idea so we can get a better grasp of what the Bible is talking about. So let's take a look then at the Hebrew word Elohim. This is the lamed is a L sound, O, ha, and then a long E sound, and then a final M or mem. So Elohim. It's the standard word for God in the Hebrew Bible, but as I said, there's a little bit more to it than that. First of all, we need to look at a more general term in Semitic languages for God, and that is the term El. Here again is the aleph with the vowel attached to it, El. Now the plural form of this is Elim. This is a long E sound with this vowel mark and the yod and then the final mem. So in terms of the way Hebrew is constructed, for standard male plurals, you have El, and then adding the ending im creates the plural. So El becomes Elim. Now El in Semitic languages is basically the name for God in general. However, it also refers to the Canaanite supreme deity who was the father of all the 70 Canaanite gods. So El is a word that you find in Mesopotamian Semitic languages, Syrian Semitic languages, Canaanite, as well as Hebrew. And adding the im makes it plural. This is, we're going to find in just a moment, is also the case with the term Elohim. Let's take a look at how El is used in one particular case in the Bible. In Genesis 14:18, it says that Melchizedek, the king of Salem, was Kohen le'el Elyon, which means priest. Kohen here is priest to El, God, and then Elyon means the exalted one, the high one, the elevated one, something like this. So it's translated generally as priest of God Most High. But notice God here is El, standard Semitic, standard Canaanite term for God, and also one that appears quite frequently in Hebrew as a term for God. Here's another example of this. In Joshua 22:20, it says that El, Elohim, so El, Elohim, Yahweh, God of gods, is Yahweh. Yahweh is another very important personal name of God, which we'll discuss at another time. So the El of the Elohim, the God of gods. The Lord is God of gods. Now there's another term for God also that is found in the Hebrew Bible and in other Semitic languages as well, and it's kind of linked to perhaps El as the former name we talked about, and this is Eloh. Now notice you've got El, and then this is kind of a long O sound, and then H at the end. So Eloh, and the plural form of this is Elohim. So you can see here the core word Eloh, when you add the im ending, you get Elohim. And that is the word that appears most frequently for God. Possibly as a personal name, possibly just as a term for God, but it's all over the place. And again, you've got the im ending just as you got with Elim, and you've got Eloh and Elohim. Now, the distinction between Elim, and Elohim is essentially this oh ending here added to the El. Maybe they're related conceptually, maybe one's derived from the other, maybe they're just independent and just kind of sound similar. It's not always quite clear. Another interesting characteristic of this is that Eloh in Hebrew is in fact cognate with the Arabic Allah. The way you get Allah is Al-Ilah, meaning the one true God. This contracts in Arabic to Allah, and you'll notice that Ilah in Arabic is essentially just a different way to pronounce Eloh. So the term Eloh, Elohim, biblical name for God, is in fact in Arabic Al-Ilah or Allah, standard Arabic name for God, which is used, by the way, by Jewish Arabs and by Christian Arabs as their name for God in the Bible and their liturgies and so forth. What we end up with then is Eloh and its plural form Elohim. But what's interesting is that Elohim is in fact the standard name for God, and it's widely used, but it's in its plural form, not in its singular form. This is sometimes called the plural of majesty, meaning that they use a plural form to indicate the greatness and glory of God. Sometimes you'll see this used with kings and other important figures. So it might be this way with Elohim here in the Hebrew Bible. Now, when Elohim is used with a singular verb, it means God. When it's used in the singular, it is translated as God with a capital G, meaning the God, the one true God. On the other hand, when it's used with plural verbs or plural adjectives and so forth, it's translated as gods in the plural form. You can't tell from the word itself whether it is plural or singular. The way you identify whether it is the God or gods is by what type of adjective or verb or other grammatical forms are associated with it. Let's give an example of this from Exodus 23. This is, of course, the Ten Commandments. Lo Yahi Lecha, you do not have to you Elohim, notice the gray is Eloh with the im plural ending, Acharim, other, and then al panei, before my face, literally. So, Elohim Acharim means other gods, other foreign gods, other pagan gods, other polytheistic gods. And yet the name here, Elohim, is also the name for God in singular in Hebrew. So Elohim Acharim, other foreign gods. This is one of the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So hopefully this discussion has helped us understand that the concept of Elohim here. It's also interesting that there's another name of God that appears in other creation narratives, Yahweh, which we'll discuss when that name pops up. But in Genesis 1, we're talking about Elohim, God, Theos in Greek, and Deus in Latin.